So I'm now going to hand over to Lynne. I think, Lynne, you are able to share your slides.
In a minute, I will.
Oh, in a minute she will. Okay. So I want you all, now I know you're all muted, and I would like you just for a second to unmute and give a hand and welcome Lynne Franks to tell us her story. So everybody, I want to make it as realistic as possible. Okay, so I'm going to hand the stage over to Lynne. Thank you, Lynne.
Thank you very much, Bev, and thank you for asking me to be part of this great group. Now, Bev has asked me to tell, I think she's asked all of us to tell our stories. And being of the age I am, my story goes on for quite a long time. So I put it into some kind of slide basis because I think visually it's always a bit more interesting. And at the end, I am going to, somebody's got a dog. And at the end, I am going to do 15 minutes Q&A. And I will be very, very delighted to answer any questions. As I was putting it together, finishing it off yesterday, I realized that there really is so many different parts to my story. So this is at least some of it. Now, what you're getting is the front story, not the back story. And of course, the back story is where all the change happens. So this is kind of all the different projects and businesses and kind of initiatives that I've been involved in for a long time. And this brings us up to date. And as a futurist, I think somebody needs to mute their doggy. It's Jack, I do say, it's not on mute, and her doggy is barking away.
Just ask everyone to, well, I'm going to mute everyone, and then Lynne will unmute herself. I think that's the easiest way to do it. If everybody's happy about that, she says trying to find the mute thing. Oh, where's that gone? Mute all. Right, now you should be able to unmute yourself, Lynne. And everybody else is muted. Right.
Not that I don't love dogs. My dog is sitting here by my feet as I speak, but I don't want to go into competition with the barking. So here I am this morning with my little story. It's a big story, actually. And as a futurist, which is one of the many careers that I have done and still do, I'm looking forward at the end of my story to where I believe not only I'm going, but also where society is going and where women are going as leaders. So off I go. So now I'm going to share my screen. So you'll see me a little bit in the corner probably. And I'm going to go there. I'm going to share it. And I'm going to, my assistant has left me slideshow I have to go to. And then I play from the start. Okay, so this is the story so far. I'm very blessed that I got an OBE, as Bev said a few years ago. And it's always very difficult to actually explain what I do. And I'm very impressed with your message, Maestro, Bev, because, you know, we're all so multi-talented, portfolio careers. And it's especially, as I say, when I get to my point, it's like, am I an author? Am I an entrepreneur? Am I a spokesperson? Am I an advisor? Well, I'm all those things and a lot more, and a mother and a grandmother and all sorts of things. So now I've got to work out how I go on. Okay, so this was the beginning. This was the beginning. We didn't even call ourselves PRs in those days because no one knew what PR meant. So that was when I was 21. And believe it or not, those breeches became one of the most fashionable items that any stylish 21-year-old in 1970 would wear. And I had a shop in those days, as I do now, and used to sell millions of them. So it looks very bizarre now, but I still wear hats. So I guess it's not that bizarre. But anyway, that's how it started. That was the beginning. That was where it started. And here I was with some of my clients. Jean-Paul Gaultier on the right, well-known international designer, and a man called Peter Bertelsen on the left, who owned most of the designer shops. You can see in the background a guy called Richard Young, who is the sort of top paparazzi and has been since then, which was the 70s, in the country, still a friend. And this was the reality. This was the backstory. Sitting on the phone, baby, stressed, dog, trying to get it all happening. So that was my first office or my second office, I think, when I moved out of my home. So that was part of the story for sure. These are my kids. It was a spontaneous modeling session. Now, you've probably all seen those love t-shirts that Catherine Hamnet did. And at those points, it was the big slogan t-shirts. That's when it first started. And this was her first advertising campaign. And I was her PR, and I promoted all these big t-shirts. This would be about 85, I guess. My kids were in the car with me, so they were sort of thrown in as models. That picture went out absolutely everywhere. So those were the days, and still out there, those t-shirts, which is amazing. These were the sort of events I did. I created London Fashion Week. I'm there with Alexander Shulman, who was the editor of Vogue for many years, and of course, Princess Diana. That was when I had to clean up a bit. Some fun pictures, Mary Portas, of course, Joanna Lumley. I only met Joanna Lumley once, and it was actually at a British fashion event, but we got on very well. And obviously the whole ad fad thing was well out and about by then. And it was kind of really, it was great to meet her, actually, a wonderful woman. So these are some of the things that I did and have done, some of them more recently than others. I'm not going to read them all out, but I've worked for most of the high street, big brands, big companies, entertainment industry. I don't know, there wasn't many areas that I wasn't involved in. A lot of these I also created the biggest AIDS awareness campaign that is still going, that's run by MAC Cosmetics, and all kinds of other things. So that's just a little group of what I did. And I'm moving on quite quickly. I got involved in as a spokesman for women's events generally. So here I was at the Stock Exchange on International Women's Day 2012. This was slightly more corporate. I was starting to do my conversations with extraordinary women, which I was lucky enough to interview some amazing women over the years. And I've got just some of them in that picture. And some of the things that I did. So I built my PR company. I'm rushing it a bit too much, I think. So I'll just go back a bit. I built my PR company up over 20 years, and it became the biggest fashion, beauty, consumer brand PR company in the country. And I was offered a number of deals to sell it. It was a time in the 80s when I never quite understood it, but lots of big marketing companies decided to buy smaller brands and then not keep the founders on. Very bizarre, really. But I was glad. I'd done 20 years. It was an amazing time for me. Just London Fashion Week alone, creating these tents down in the King's Road. And it was the days of Princess Diana. It was the days of all the rock stars wearing the fashion designers' clothes. Again, it's something that I initiated, and they would all sit in what then was the front row. Now, of course, it's so much more glamorous and been corporatized and formulaic, but then it was much more spontaneous. So we'd have Boy George and Spandau Ballet and all the others of the sort of Brit pop bands and acts of that time sitting wearing the clothes in the front row. Madonna, we would always wait for her. She'd always turn up late. It was an amazing, amazing time. And I built it up to about 50 staff, and mostly women, not entirely. It was enjoyable. It was like one non-going, hard-working party, to be perfectly honest. And there were obviously times that were a little bit more stressful, but I only remember the good times, and I don't look back that often. A friend of mine said to me the other day, "Why don't you look back more at all the things you've done?" And I said, to be perfectly honest, I forget them because I'm so living in the present and the future that's more interesting for me. I wrote my autobiography many years ago, and even that was all about the future. It was absolutely now. A futurist journey to her inner self. So that's where I was at. So one of the things I did was I was asked to become chair of a women's radio station, the first women's radio station in the country, probably the last as well. And that was really good fun. And from there, I put on the biggest event that's ever been held for women in the country at that time. Actually, it was the first event really of a gathering for women to look at all aspects of their life. So that was in '95, What Women Want. And I took over the whole South Bank. I had sold my business by then. So I was working with my 14-year-old assistant, my daughter as my assistant, and got a lot of support from Anita Roddick, bless her, the late Anita Roddick. And we had these big posters all up in Body Shop stores around the country. We had a fantastic concert, as you can see, with Sinead O'Connor and Pretenders, Chrissie Hynde, Joe Brand, Jermaine Greer came. And we looked at all aspects of a woman's life. And that really hadn't been done by then. So women as a consumer. women, business women, women as artists, the environment, natural health, our sexuality, how to use the internet, 95, but we still really were only just learning to use the internet. And the biggest queues were for the different workshops and seminars all around the South Bank were for how to learn the internet. There was a huge queue, extraordinary, because it doesn't seem that long ago, but I mean, never mind social media, we didn't know how to move around and maneuver ourselves at all. And we had that, and we had, yes, sexuality workshop, learning to enjoy and share and find out about what you enjoyed sexually, which was also, even only 95, wasn't something we talked about really. And natural health, and the massage, foot massages that the Body Shop did, and wonderful seminars done by Romy Fraser and founder of Neil's Yard and her crew. It was an amazing, amazing event. And we also did things, as you can see here, on refugee women, which I'm still very involved in and very committed to. So I went to live in California shortly after that, and I started, because I'm some kind of addict, I guess, another PR company. It was called Global Fusion. We had offices in London and Los Angeles and San Francisco, and I'm just so glad that I neither live nor work in the United States right now. That's 100% for sure. But it was a great time to be there. It really was the start of the internet, and I had clients in San Francisco and LA who were part of that cutting edge sort of really the early stages of the technology industry. It was before Facebook, it was before social media. It was an amazing time to be there. I lived in Los Angeles near the beach. I'd go off and see the dolphins every morning for a walk about 7 o'clock. I had a great team of women, and we worked for American companies all over the West Coast. And then we would be promoting them in New York. And I learned a lot about the fact that the United States to us over here is one country, but when you're over there, it is so different. I think we're seeing that, excuse me, right now in the election results. It's very, very different people. And so when you're doing PR for brands all over the US, it's a very different ballgame, and it was a great learning curve. And we got involved in what I call new marketing. So we were not just doing PR, we were creating events, and we were always, my business has always been very values focused. And back in the days of Lynne Franks PR, we would always do a lot of causes and awareness campaigns and initiatives from environment, human rights, women's rights. It wasn't just something that I started doing after I left. It went right the way through the PR agency, that we would always balance that out. And with Global Fusion, we continue to do that. And we're always bringing people together, ideas together. And it was a very powerful time, really. Then I came back. I am running, I'm going through a lot of years very fast because of the time, so I apologize. So Beehive, I don't know if any of you ever went to Beehive or remember Beehive. I had this idea that I really wanted to start a women's business center. And at the beginning, I was looking at a church in Luton, and I was going to take it over, and I was going to have an area where, because Luton to me seemed such a perfect mixture of women from the green belt together with immigrant women who didn't ever mix out of their environment, out of their community. And I felt we could really bring women together, and it was also quite a sort of hub for radical thinking. And I felt if we worked with the women, with the mothers, with the wives, we could really get to understand each other. So I put a lot of time into doing something in Luton, work with the local university. At the end of the day, the church, which had actually been run as part of the local university, was in such a bad state that I had this vision, this dream of, in one corner, I was going to have Aveda teaching the immigrant women and others how to do hair and have that as a skill. And it was all going to be about skills learning and connection. And anyway, it was so expensive to convert it. So I then, very luckily, met Mark Dixon at a lunch, a business lunch, who's the man who owns Regis, the business spaces, and somebody who doesn't live in this country and is not that available. But as with many of the things that I've done over the years, I sort of put it out there, and it happens. I attract it in, I manifest. I believe we can all manifest. I believe that in synchronicity, I believe that there's many, many things we can do that are not all about what is the seen, but actually having the intention and having the determination, and things come in. So there am I, sitting up opposite the man who's got more business space in the world than anybody else. And I said to him, would you be up for doing some women's business clubs? And sort of nagged him enough until he gave me the name of one of his senior women in the company, Celia Dunn, who's still there. And together we developed beehive, and they became, at that point, which was, I never remember dates very well, but about 15 years ago, I guess. Really very, very beautiful. This one was in Covent Garden. It was packed, it was busy. We had one in Bristol and one in Manchester. And the one in Covent Garden particularly, although there's nobody sitting in this picture, was incredibly successful. And we were still finding out what the business looked like. And it was a partnership between myself and Regis. And then out of the blue, really at the peak, after 3 years, the landlords of the building we were in, this beautiful old building right in the middle of the of Covent Garden, was taken by the landlords, as were all the buildings around there, and they decided to turn them into very expensive flats and shops. And it's very ironic, because one of the things I haven't shown you here, just remember, is that I had the first fashion shop in Covent Garden, and that was in, I don't know, mid to late 70s. It was called Mrs. Howie. My husband was a designer of my late, not my late husband, my ex-husband, very much alive, was called Paul Howie. He was a designer, a very successful designer, and he had shops called Howie. So we bought, or we acquired this big building. As the vegetable market moved out of Covent Garden, I moved in. I was actually there in a smaller office, and we had at the front a shop called Mrs. Howie, which was the first high-tech design shop in London. Somebody put it up on Instagram the other day, and again, it was like, oh my goodness, I've forgotten. Of course, I had Mrs. Howie, and it was very, very successful actually. I got lots of young designers from the colleges, from the Royal College, doing special clothes for us. A lot of designers who at that point had only been doing women's wear, started doing women and men's wear for us. We had hand knitwear that Paul designed, and we had an upstairs and a downstairs, and we used to get all the sort of rock stars coming in. We had Bowie and Bob and Paula, and that period, all those people would be hanging out, and much to the delight of all my young assistants who would be peeking out, because the PR office was at the back, and downstairs at the back was design offices. It really was a hub. It was my first hub, I guess, and it worked very, very well for a good period of time. And my husband had a wholesale business. I won't go into whole details, but anyway, it was another project. It worked well. It came to an end. But the irony of it is that, having really been one of the main instigators of getting Covent Garden to be fashionable and to have all these wonderful shops, I then had to, I really got affected by my own success. I mean, that had been the 70s. Here we are, 20 odd years later, 30 years, and Covent Garden was so successful that the landlords got us to move out, which was a real shame. And we couldn't find another building which would have worked so well. And so it was a time to, as it has been a number of times in my career, to say, well, that was an amazing experience. It did a lot of good. It helped a lot of women start their businesses, but it was time to move on. Now, none of this is in actual date order. It's just some of the things that I did as a speaker and do as a speaker. I still do Lynne Franks in Conversation with Extraordinary Women. I've been very blessed to interview some amazing women. I love interviewing other people. I don't remember my own story, and B, I kind of get a bit bored with it, but much more interesting listening to others. So I've interviewed over the years Jacqueline Gold from Ann Summers. I can't remember the names now. It's my brain going. Oh, I interviewed Meg Matthews 2-3 weeks ago about the menopause. Who's got the best-selling menopause out there right now, the new hot. And I have interviewed many, many others. Alison Owen, the top movie producer, woman movie producer in the country, who's an old friend. And she came here the other day, and we did an online. So we now got them online because Bev and Jill, we pivoted, and they were live. And I used to do them in the Hospital Club regularly. Katie Brindle, who's a fantastic expert on Chinese medicine and beauty, who's got the Hey You products. There's a mixture of politics. Margaret Hodge, the MP, who I'm a huge fan of. I mean, real different people from different areas, business, politics, spirituality, spiritual leaders. And that's been a really fun part of my life. And I did TEDx in 2012, Return of the Wise Woman, that is on my, which is, like many things I do, a little bit before its time. It is now Return of the Wise Woman. I now feel that I'm almost at the point where I can claim I'm a wise woman. I get there, I go up and down, but mostly I'm there. And I believe that this is the time for all of us wise women, and I include every single person on this call and those who will watch it later, this is our time, and it's not just about ourselves, although that's very, very important, and our families and our communities. We have the experience and the wisdom to take a leadership role in what the new world is going to look like, which is never going to be the same again. We're going to go on about that a lot more, I know, this afternoon, and in fact at the end of this presentation. But it is, for me now in 2020, the time of the return, and very much the need of the return of the wise woman. If you think of the wise women in societies, indigenous tribes, where the wise woman is still very much the matriarch, and in ancient times as well. So that's for me. So I've just rushed you over 35 years of my life. I'm just trying to think, what have I left out? What women want. I was in California 5 years, very successful there. Time to come home, came home. And of course, I have left out, and it's not in actual order, that while I was in California, I wrote the Seed Handbook. Now, the Seed Handbook was a completely different way of talking about women and business. Seed Handbook, the feminine way to create business. So here's what if there was a new way to do business. And I know, because time has moved on 20 years hence, this is very much what all of you are committed to and work towards. But then 20 years ago, what if there was a new way to do business that brought communities together? It promoted healthy lifestyle and well-being, and it empowered women to become leaders. So that's where my thoughts were going at that point, as well as running the PR business, Global Fusion in California. I felt that there was going to be this time coming when women all over the world would want to start their own businesses, that they wanted a business that reflected their values. They wanted to work in a much more flexible way, that they could work from home pre-COVID. We had the technology now. We could do it our own way. We could choose the way we worked, how we worked, and who we worked with. And I felt that there would be a real space where we could move into this true leadership role. And so I wrote the Seed Handbook. That came out 20 years ago, 2000. That's come out in a number of languages all over the world. It came out across the English-speaking world simultaneously. So it came out in United States, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, of course, the UK. I did launches all over the United States in Bloomingdale stores. I haven't got that on this presentation. But anyway, I wrote a series of other books, and that book really defined this new way of women working for themselves and working together. And from that, it also came out, it's actually recently come out in Russia, Kazakhstan, and in Afghanistan, and Germany, and Japan. And I still get a huge amount of women writing to me and saying, I bought your book 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and it changed the way I thought about myself, because it was really also the first time that a book had come out, which was as much about personal development as it was about business. And I think that was the whole thing, because we know that what holds us back pretty much is so often is it possible to turn off the bing so I don't pinging you coming in? I can hear them going ding ding. Thanks. So it's certainly what I believed and felt was going to be the change, and a lot of other women found so too. I am rewriting it every time I try and update it, something else happens, and so it is a work in progress. But the book still reads as well now as it does then, and I don't say that with any ego or arrogance, because I don't even know where some of this stuff comes from. It just really comes through, and it comes from my experiences, and I'm just delighted that whatever I've learned can actually help others. So Seed became a whole series of content that has been delivered all over the world, as I've said. I just did some fun figures here. So if I've never actually sat and added the amount of people that have heard me speak, but that is more or less because it's broadcast, and I have traveled the world, and I've talked about Seed, and I've spoken at many conferences. Seed is an acronym for Sustainable Enterprise and Empowerment Dynamics. And that too seems so relevant today, because we're all talking about how we can be sustainable, how we can be sustainable in our communities, how can we be sustainable in our businesses and indeed in our lives. And that's, I think, certainly here in my little town in Wincanton in Somerset, we've got a whole community project of bringing sustainability in every aspect. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. So these are some of the figures. So it got out to a lot of people, and we have an app, and if anyone wants to download what the manifesto and little exercises to go with, It's from the App Store, free. It's Seed Cards. Of course, we're on social media, and I do online workshops. And these are kind of figures that have attended a lot of the trainings. We have trained and done content literally from women's prisons, African villages, corporate boardrooms, to branches of Starbucks, where we did a very big project, a long time ago now, again, I don't remember, maybe 12 years ago, where we trained up the managers in local Starbucks, and they then had these seed mornings where women would come along and do a very simple program which would make them feel better about themselves and actually start them on their journey. The women's prisons works I'm particularly proud of. We worked in a number of prisons, and I know we changed people's lives because people came and told me afterwards. All the work we've done has been very different. We've worked in post-war zones, and they've all been very different kind of content of how we've done it, but all have made a difference, and that's really what I'm committed to. And I'm also committed, of course, to the last point here, which is I have devoted 25 years, probably more actually, if I think about it, a lot more, to gender equality and a balanced, harmonious society. I don't think I've got it on here either, but I'm also a social activist in terms of women's rights, and I ran 1 Billion Rising in this country, which is part of Eve Ensler's projects with vagina monologues and drawing attention to women's abuse all over the world. So I was very much involved in that and created very big high-profile events at the Albert Hall, Trafalgar Square, Marble Arch, with politicians, musicians, got a lot of coverage. That was about 10 years ago. So social activism for me has always been part of who I am, what I do, and things I care about. And there's ways of doing it now in so many different ways, we have so many different tools, but we're living in a different world. And so everything I'm doing and everything I've done, I'm taking a very, very good look at and saying, okay, well, what is the future? How are we going to do this? So our vision, now I wrote this before COVID actually, but it's, if anything, as I've said earlier, it's even more important. My vision for 2020 is to grow and strengthen our roles as a powerful community of women entrepreneurs and leaders who together will develop sustainable economic regeneration through the values of cooperation, co-creativity, and a circular system of individual and community empowerment. And I am really excited by the fact that we are also talking about a circular economy now, because we can't really do that if we don't have the economy to back it up. And some of the new ideas, even coming from my own district council here in Somerset, talking about the circular economy and what that means. It means no wastage when we have a business, improving our ecology through our businesses, doing having a business that is actually not just helping us, but it's helping our community and the big community and the small community in many ways. Care community, the donut economy. I'm sure you've heard of that. The donut economy is based on a book by Kate Rawthorne, which is all about creating businesses that really do help not only the customers, not only the makers, but the environment. And Amsterdam has just become the first donut economy city. And there are many countries and regions, not enough, but they are starting, Costa Rica, Colombia, where this donut economy is being taken very seriously. And I'm hoping it will also be taken very seriously in the southwest of the UK, where I and many of you are based. And everywhere. I mean, it should be across the UK. So there's been exciting things that are actually going on that really reflect the thoughts I've got here. You know, the fact that we are able to work together, we can collaborate, we can help each other, we can support each other, we can inspire each other. I mean, you know, what we're all doing here today, putting our time into this because we want to support others. Bev's put it on because she wants to support others. Jill's involved, Sunny's involved. I mean, it is something that we are doing. Of course, you know, it puts our reputation out there, that's fine too, but we're doing it because we want to support and help others. And that's why I'm here. And I'm really excited to be here, as I said earlier. So these are some of the things that we did at SEED, Sustainable Enterprise and Empowerment Dynamics. So here we have, at one time I did a big meeting at the South Bank as part of WOW, which was Women of the World, which is now all over the world, became the precursor to the What Women Want that I put on in 95, and it developed into that, and I was always part of it till I came to live here. And so once I put up some big white paper on the walls, and all the people that were there, the Seed community and others, put together what we saw Seed happening. And when I look back at it now, because that was, I don't even remember, again, I'm hopeless on years, but it would have been about 2008, 9, and so much of that has happened. And I'm proud that that's happened. And here it was, my usual way of doing a workshop with a baby on my knee. This was a workshop below with at Beehive, which was a wonderful venue to have workshops at. I mean, it was a gift. Beehive, while it happened, was a total gift. And I'm delighted to say that what I have now, my Seed Hub, which I'll show you in a minute, is very much a reflection of the same sort of style, and actually the same artist who did all those paintings on the walls, the paintings downstairs too. Here I am in Africa. I work with charity African Solutions for African Problems in South Africa, where I worked with the rural women, the grandmothers, many of them, who were looking after the children because the middle generation had got AIDS and their children were not around. And I learned so much from them. It was one of the most wonderful experiences. I went twice. It was one of the most wonderful experiences I'd ever had. And even though most of them we couldn't even speak the same language. They were Kozo. I can't speak Kozo, but which is done with a click, and I can't do that. But I learned very early on that language and words are about 11% of communication. But what really comes is love from the heart and exchanging energy through our body language, the tone of our voice, and through many ways of doing things that don't always mean you have to speak the same language. So that was an incredible experience for me. A little bit below, we created Women's Enterprise Program, which went around the country with Tribal, which was CDAT, the tribal people. And that was the first blended learning program that was for women to learn how to start a business. And again, it involved a lot of the original Seed values of personal development combined with very practical ways of how to do a business plan, how to market yourself. We still have this program, and we're going to put that online. We are pivoting. I'm going to use that word. You're going to get so fed up with it, Bev. And we are pivoting. And so we are taking that program, which we launched about 12 years ago, maybe a bit more, and we are developing it now into small online programs which people can just download very easily. And we've got some fantastic graphics now. It's amazing how technology changes though, because we've got such great graphics in that, and I've got to work out how we can digitalize those and bring them up to date. So that's one of my little lists I've got to do. And here I was actually in Croatia speaking to a community of women, and I worked in Sarajevo after the war in Yugoslavia. This was more recently. And we worked with the women there, the women survivors. I didn't put any pictures up, I should have done. The women survivors who'd lost their husbands, lost their fathers, lost their sons. And the one thing that they could do was that they did traditionally was knit. So I worked with UNESCO and the World Bank on a project with them where I found some great designers in the UK and the US, people like Betty Jackson and Adina Ronne and others, and they designed simple garments, which we then had made up in Sarajevo by these women. They could earn a living. It gave them their confidence back. It brought them together as a community, because while they would sit around and knit together, they would talk and share what had happened to them. And it was an incredible project. And then I brought it to London Fashion Week, and it sold to the various stores. So that was a great project we did for 2 or 3 years, and hugely rewarding again for me. I mean, they even did a little fashion show. So on the left here, some of these pictures I think are repeated, but on the left here is Bloomingdale's window that I managed to get in Manhattan. Got all these windows to launch Seed. It's what I call chutzpah. Don't ask me how I did it. I know somebody, they introduced to somebody else, got to see the head woman at marketing at Bloomingdale's. They didn't even sell books there. And I managed to get them to give me these windows. They then used them to promote their women entrepreneurs they bought from. And then I went around America, particularly California, doing workshops, Seed workshops in Bloomingdale's stores, which was one of my most challenging moments. And I loved it. And that was 20 years ago. It was fantastic. I am so, I don't know why I've got the same picture there, but anyway, I'm very grateful for all the things I've done. a little bit more up to date, got my OBE from the Prince of Wales. He wanted to talk to me about fashion, and I was much more interested and proud of the fact that I got it for women's empowerment. And he started talking to me about what was happening in London Fashion Week. And I said, well, you know, I haven't been in that for a long time, but I'm working with women's empowerment. And what I didn't say to him was that I had had certain very enjoyable meetings with his current wife, but also had worked with his former wife on the fashion, but I didn't put that one out. I didn't think I'd spoil the moment, but I did say that I'd been at Clarence House and I'd been with Camilla and how much she supported women and women's empowerment. And he laughed, had a giggle and said, yes, he finds all these very strong, powerful women in his house. Usually disappears. So it was a very nice engagement. So then I moved to Somerset and here I am now. And I bought, having had the experience of really having to leave Beehive and several times realizing that if I didn't own the building, I don't really have the power. So I sold my home in Spain and I came to Wincanton and I bought these two buildings next door each other, right in the middle of this little town I live in. One was an old pub and I completely refitted that and made it look inside very much like Beehive used to. And I bought next door. That's how it looks inside. It's beautiful. It's not open right now. We'll talk about that a bit later. And I had bought next door. It's got this beautiful shop at the front and I live behind there. And I'm very happy being here. And I love living in a small town and a small community. And I'm also very much enjoying the opportunity it's giving me to be involved in that community and see, as I work so much on a sort of bigger scale as well, what changes we can make in one small town and how what we learn can actually be shared then with other towns, other villages, other communities, other cities, because we've got so many of the issues that any small town would have, and now with the lockdown a lot more. So what would be the two businesses you wouldn't want to have right now? Would be a non-essential retail business and a cafe with bedrooms. That's the shop. It's absolutely glorious, as you can see. It genuinely looks even better than that. I love it. I love having a shop, I must say, mostly because that means I can do my own shopping and not have to go too far. And we do very well. So we have, of course, gone online. We went online in the last lockdown. We are staying open for collect and click, as are many retailers. We do have a certain amount of essential products. We sell supplements and we sell oils and well-being products. We're very focused on well-being. So I feel confident that we will still have our loyal customers and seed family buying their Christmas presents from us. It's already started. And I think that a lot of people realize that supporting independent retailers, and in turn, we are supporting independent women entrepreneurs. Everything we buy comes from women entrepreneurs, small businesses, comes from cooperatives. It's holistic, they're eco products. They are everything's recyclable. Everything we do is sustainable. So as we get supported, we then can support others. And that is also part of the circular economy. So I love the shop. Please get in touch. Come and do your Christmas shopping. It's beautiful. And then we have a big room where I'm sitting right now, which is the Seed workshop room. And I do these days a certain amount of one-to-one mentoring when I've got the time. We do workshops here. This was obviously before lockdown. We've got these beautiful bedrooms. And this is the room I'm sitting in, where we do our workshops. We've got a lovely garden that we use for workshops. So I've also done a lot of community events. This is some of them where every International Women's Day, we've shown a film which is women's related, and we bring the community into that. We've always been packed out. So that's 3 years we've done that. So this coming International Women's Day, we are going to do a women's film festival. Nothing that's not ambitious. So we're going to be doing a women's film festival, and we are working very much on how we can be flexible. Is it going to be online or is it going to be in real time? Are we going to be locked up in March, or are we going to be able to do something which won't be in my place? It'll be in a much bigger venue. So that, again, I'll talk about a little bit in a moment. So we would have monthly networking events here with great speakers, packed out, women from all around the area. And I, again, loved it. Healthy food, vegan food. We'd dance, we'd laugh, we'd sing. We had a lot of music here, great speakers like Joe Berry up on the left-hand corner, my friend who's a relationship expert. On the right-hand corner, we've got Paula Carnell. They're all part of Seed now, who is a bee expert. Molly Gunn, with me in the blue dress, Selfish Mother. She was one of my extraordinary women. Her business started from her blog, as a lot of you probably know. She started with a blog, built up a huge following. She was a fashion journalist previously. She started selling t-shirts. She started giving a lot of the money from the t-shirts, sweatshirts, and other products to women's charities. She raised over $1 million. And because she was working with certain charities, she got a lot of very high profile celebrities supporting her. And the business has done very well. And I love her. She's in the next town. She's a great friend. So I have met the most wonderful women. We started the Wincanton Seed Market. So that was a fun little project, which was going last month, won't probably be happening now until the spring, where we would get local makers to come and sell their products, local craftspeople. That's our woman mayor, Sue Shelburne Barrow, in the middle with her chains on, and other women from the area who are retailers or in the council. I'm not saying there's no men that live in Wincanton, they are, but at the moment, it's some very, very powerful, wonderful women here, and I'm very proud to be part of that group. We turned Power of Seven onto online retreats. They were live retreats. We turned them to online as soon as we could, and these were some of the ones, and we're carrying on. We're starting in January with our online retreats, which include well-being, fitness, dance, of course, me, and wellness experts, and they are over a 3-day period. And people, women, and there's a picture of Anne McCluskey, who's on this very cool, I can just see her on the right hand side, and there you are, who come from these retreats, then move on to the Power of Seven work that I do, which is using 7 archetypes as a toolkit for women to move into their natural power. This is some of the publicity that's come out since we've been here, which is great. I mean, I haven't talked to you about AbFab. I said to Bev, don't refer to AbFab, whatever you do. Here I am. You can see, you can have an AbFab. It has been incredibly useful. I did not go out of my way to get that tag. I did not go out of my way to be said to be the personality that inspired Absolutely Fabulous. I was Jennifer Saunders and Dawn French's PR. Jennifer's actually admitted it was based on me. I'm always in denial, but the fact is, and the reality is, that it has been a huge benefit. It drives me crazy because I feel my work is so much more beyond what AbFab's about. But if that's what opens the door, and that's what they then are ready to do, a 3-page article, or like we had in the Telegraph. Actually, it wasn't, they hardly mentioned AbFab. I haven't got it handy. Last week, Telegraph magazine did a 3-page article. Stella magazine did a 3-page article about what we're doing here and what our plans are. I should have had it here, really. And I'm delighted to say that AbFab was only 2 sentences of the whole story. It goes down. Oh, here it is. So this was, yeah, a couple of nice pages in Stella magazine. And, you know, I guess I really have to accept that my past is my present and that's my future. So instead of getting all like, don't talk about AbFab, please, actually, I should really acknowledge it and honor it and say, well, you know, it certainly hasn't done me any harm. That's for sure. I take myself much more seriously than that, but it certainly hasn't done me any harm. And, you know, it was a women's show, written by women, acted by women, produced by women. So really, it was a fun and a very, very funny show, which I personally love. And actually, they quoted me here saying, I resented its hideous. I never said that. I love Absolutely Fabulous. I watch it, haven't watched it for a while. I do watch it if it comes up. I'm a huge fan. I think Jennifer Saunders is brilliant. So what next for me? So October 2020, I launched the Seed Hub Club as a membership platform. And that's going really well. I'm learning what that means. I've got to bring up, because Jill mentioned it, and I know we're going to be talking about it later, but I really like the way you mentioned that, Jill, that we've gone, where have we gone from Seed Network to Club? You know, is that part of the pivoting? I know we're talking about that later, but I couldn't resist because it really gave me some juice to think about that. Because I didn't plan that where we're all going is we're going from networking to the concept more of a club, of belonging, of a tribe. Of course, you're a part of tribe too. So, but we want more than the original. I was on the first board of the very first women's network, business networking network in the country. I don't even remember what it's called now. I think it's called Women's Business Network or something. And I was one of them, and that was a long, long time ago. And it was still kind of based on the male paradigm, the male style in a way. We know that's changed. It's much more about collaboration, and it's a club, and we belong, and whichever club you belong to, or you maybe belong to 2 or 3 clubs, and that's okay. I mean, that's where we're finding our friends, and our life is so much now online that it is so important for all of us, whether we live on our own or we live with a big family, whatever it is, that we have our tribe, we have our connection. So we only launched Seed Hub Club, I think like 4 weeks ago. We're constantly doing events from fitness to meditation to just talks, wisdom chats between myself and others about how we see the world going. And that, as much as anything, is the most powerful thing, and what we can do together. And then the big event that I'm planning, I must be crazy, is March 21. It's going to be on and offline, or it'll be a hybrid. It's called Seeding the Future. And the reason it's come about is that Wincanton is going through a regeneration program for 3 years. And I was encouraged by South Somerset District Council to do some kind of event here. And I thought it would be a good idea. At this point, when it first started, we were not in lockdown. So having to really pivot, really be flexible, really not know from second to second. We're doing a budget, but is it going to be online or is it going to be offline? Is something we're still looking at. But what it will be 100% is it's in 3 parts. First part is how we can create much more of a growing kind of community here. In this farming community, we still have certain housing where people live, where they're not growing vegetables, the children aren't aware. So we want to create much more of a culture of growing, bring the farmers, the local gardeners into with the children, and create a 6-month program from March, where we're planting the seeds right the way through to harvest, of growing vegetables throughout the town. We're not the first. I mean, Incredible Edibles did it in Yorkshire and started it some years ago. Incredible, and that's such a success. So we want to learn from them, and we want to do it more, and we want to create somewhere where we can engage every single member of this community of all ages into a growing project. So we are starting that in March, and I'm doing this in partnership with the Balsam Centre, which is our local community centre charity, and also Where West Begins, who I've been working with the films for the last 3 years. Which is run by an incredibly smart woman called Penny Nagel. So we're doing it in collaboration. And then I'm using my KIC, which I've never used, the Seed KIC, the community interest company, which I set up years ago, want to use and have been waiting for the right project to put this through. And then we will have the film, the Women's Film Festival, but we're also going to do a young people's film award, and we're going to spend the summer months doing workshops for young people in the area on how to make a film, even if it's for a little video for TikTok or something, so that they start getting confident about filmmaking skills, and that's part of it as well. And then the third part, which is the gathering of amazing women. I'm hoping to have speakers from all over the world who are involved in the new aspects of the new future, whether mostly around localization, regeneration, growing, and that includes growing business, but very much from this new way of doing business. And we're going to be bringing in women farmers. So I didn't mean to do that, sorry. And yeah, it's hugely ambitious. I must be crazy, but anyway, so you'll be hearing from me about that one. I hope you'll all be involved. So it may, as I say, be a certain amount, or mostly online. There will be community aspects of it, seeding the future. So this is a quote that continually inspires me. It's by Buckminster Fuller, who's sadly no longer with us, who was an amazing American visionary engineer architect. He did many, many things. If you haven't ever seen any of his work, he created the geodesic dome. Very extraordinary man. But this quote really gets me inspired every time. And when I'm looking at the world as it is today, and the world that it was, and the world I do not want to go back to, and the future of how it can be, and how that future is going to be led by women, and how when we look even today at the news and what's going on in America, saying this is not right, this cannot carry on, we have to create something new, but we will never create the new if we fight the existing reality. That's not the way to do it. So Buckminster Fuller said, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you have to build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. For me, that is about us all coming together as women and working to creating this new future. And I feel it so passionately, and whatever years I've got left to have this energy, I'm committed to it, creating this new future for my grandchildren, for other grandchildren. And as the Indigenous grandmothers, the 13 grandmothers who have been meeting for years say, it's the 7 generations to come. So we have to make something so much better in every single way, the way we live, the way we work, the way we eat, the way we grow, the way we spend. So that's this. So I can talk to you more about it anytime at the Seed Hub Club. That is what we do. We have the vision, we're growing together, we have the shop, buy from each other, we can promote our businesses there, we connect, come and visit when we're able to again, and we can read and we can watch all the incredible speakers that I also have on the Seed Hub Club, constantly coming to offer free workshops that will really grow everybody's lives, all your lives, my life, the people that are doing the presentations lives. That's what it's about. It's constantly growing. The seeds are planted, the seeds have been sown. Let's grow together and create this beautiful garden where we can all benefit and where others can come and benefit too. So on terms of timing, it's 10:30, and I said that we were going to have 10 minutes or however long Bev allows me to have any questions. I really hope there are some. So I don't know if you're going to demute or it's going into.
Yeah, I will. If you could stop your share.
I'm doing it now, yeah.
Yeah, then I can see people around. So first of all, let's say thank you to Lynne for that amazing story that now I'm exhausted by, and I don't know where Lynne gets her energy from. And I want to ask the first question, and I'm going to go open it up, because one of the things I found working with women is where we get very afraid and we don't want to rock boats, and we don't. So through your long and varied career, was it a plan, or did a lot of it you just sort of fell into because of the passion you had for the subject?
Thank you, Bev. It's a great question. There was never a plan. There is still no plan. I did not intend to come to Wincanton, open a cafe and a shop and anything else at all. I've retired at least 3 times. No, it came together, and I do listen to my intuition, and sometimes I follow, I'm Aries, I kind of rush into it and I follow it too fast, and sometimes it's a good idea to just stay still, which is why I do meditation, so I don't rush into things. But yeah, I mean, it's no plan. Why did I was very successful. I love living in Los Angeles. I love living by the sea, lived in why did I come back? I lived in Mallorca, I had a home there for 25 years. There's no logic or reason why I do what I do. And right now I have no doubt whatsoever this is where I'm supposed to be. I have no doubt. And my children and grandchildren do not live around here, so that's sad for me. But equally, I know this is where I am absolutely supposed to be, in this actual building. That's where I'm supposed to be. So I listen to my intuition a lot. Sometimes I'm a bit too early, very much too early in some projects I do, and I catch up with myself. But I'm feeling right now that despite there being no plan in my logical mind, somewhere there was a plan, because where I am now, not just geographically, but with everything I've done, all my work, all the experience I've had, that's exactly where I'm supposed to be now. And I feel, and it's not just me, I think for a lot of us, it's like, particularly of a certain age, when we go to that wise woman phase, it's almost as if we were born to be in this time, to be in our training, to become the wise women. And so that we can become really the holders of that space for the new generations coming through. So I didn't have a plan, but maybe some energetic level, there was a plan.
Excellent. I love that, actually, because I plan and plan and plan. It's only when I don't plan that it all comes together. Jill has a question for you. Then I have a question from Tristan. So Jill, if you unmute.
Thanks, Bev. Lynne, another fabulous presentation. Thank you so much. You are without doubt one of my greatest heroes. You've heard me say that before. And I'm sorry about the question, but it's the one that I'm always interested in. Out of all those amazing achievements, are there any that you would say, yeah, that's the one I'm really the most proud of?
It's a great question. because I live in the present and in the future, there's something the other day I thought, yes, I'm really, really proud of that. I don't know, there's not one. I think What Women Want was a huge one for me, because I did it on no budget and took over the whole of the South Bank and had an extraordinary event that helped a lot of people and helped me. It was beautiful. But no, I think for me, it's always what's next. It really is, you know. So now it's like, okay, what's next will be this big event in the spring, which I really hope can help people everywhere and be of service. So no, there's not one. There's not. I'm not somebody that tends to sit on my laurels, because there's so much more to be done, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Tristan. Now, Tristan is a multitasker, so if he's able to ask the question himself, great. If he's on the phone or another call, or actually sometimes a whole other workshop, I'll ask it for him. Tristan, you there? Right, I'm going to ask it for him. Tristan says, what was the best advice you were given that you never took?
I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. I'm not somebody that, I really don't know. I can't, that's a real man's question, isn't it? I mean, man's question. I wouldn't even remember. If it was so unimportant that I never took it, it would have got in one ear and out the next. So why would I have held on to it?
Fair enough. Okay, so now we have a question from Jack. I don't have the name here, so Jack.Aduce. Who is that person who would like to?
The lady with the dogs.
Unmute, Jack, and ask your question. Oh, no? Okay, I'll ask for you then. She loved your authentic story, loved it, and asked, how did you juggle everything you did with balancing work and home life?
It was a real challenge because, as I mentioned, we didn't have the technology then. So I didn't even have a mobile phone to see if my kids are okay during the day. And it was a real struggle. And I don't think I did it brilliantly. And there was a certain amount of guilt, you know, when I was at work, should I be with the kids? When I was with kids, should I be working? It's nothing that doesn't occur, I think, for most working mothers, but it is easier now. And it wasn't easy then. And I'm sorry that I wasn't around more my kids at certain times. Definitely, that's, if I have a regret, it's that. But you know, they're adults now, they're in their 40s, they've got children, they're great parents, they've got good careers. I must have done something right, but that's it's a struggle juggling, but a lot easier now because we work from home now. I mean, how much easier can it be to be there when they come home from school? I couldn't do any of that. I worked in Covent Garden and my family lived in South London, and so I had to arrange a lot of evening events. So it was really tough, actually. It was being pulled. And that's when I turned to Buddhism, actually. When I was about in my 30s, I became a Buddhist and I started chanting because I felt I was out of balance, and I'd met this practice through other friends. And I realized that I needed something that would just keep me centered because I was being pulled in so many directions. And I still do that Buddhist practice now. I mean, I stopped for a number of years and then I started again. Very, very powerful chanting practice. I do it every morning. I did it before I came on here, and it just brings me into my center. So, and I meditate as well. So that was very necessary. It's about
grounding yourself, isn't it, sometimes, and slowing down. We've got time for one more question, and that's from Anne McCluskey. Go on, Anne, unmute yourself and ask.
Okay, thank you, Bev. How do we ensure we avoid alienating men, Lynn, in shaping the future?
Such a good question. We've got to do this in partnership with men. There's absolutely, I mean, I've got a quote here, which I don't think I've got time to read, but it's all about the future. You probably heard me, Anne, read it before about cooperation. And the first cooperation we must do is cooperation between male and female. But I believe that this kind of soft power, which we call the feminine power, is equally accessible and desirable for men as it is women. And if men can let go of their wounds and their pain and their need to behave in a certain way, then I think we can really do it together. What we cannot do is adapt to the old paradigm masculine way, because that's where we think success is, where we have to, you know, where power and greed becomes the big corruptive force, as we see so clearly in what's going on in American elections, which is just horrific. And so it is up to us as women to hold our hands out to men and say, we can do this together, but let's come from a new place of love and soft power and not aggression and the need, that old hierarchical male linear way of doing things, when we come from the heart instead. And we have to remember that as well, because we're strong women, we're powerful women, you know, and we also need to stay in that space of heart as well. It's so important for all of us as we go forward.
I'm going to jump in because I'm anal about timings. And thank you. That was a beautiful question, actually, to end your story on, Lynn. Do stay around during the day, I hope. I'll pop in and out if you're really busy, but the room will be open. And can I just say, again, on behalf of everybody, a huge thank you for sharing with us